Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Subscription Scaled. I'm your host, Nick Frederick. My guest today is Melissa Kwan, who is the CEO at eWebinar. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Nick.
Well, it's good to have you coming at us from a late night all the way over in Amsterdam, but we appreciate you making the time out of your evening to chat here today.
It's my pleasure.
I guess for those listeners that don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself, and of course, tell us about eWebinar and how you guys came to start that up.
Yeah, that's a big question, I guess.
It is.
I was like, where do I start? I don't have enough time. So 3 times bootstrapper, had 2 companies before this, both in real estate technology. Originally from Vancouver, moved to New York to, grow my previous business because that was like, the real estate capital of the world.
Okay.
And eWebinar actually solves a problem that I personally live with in my previous company. So we were always bootstrapped. So I was everything except for code. So you can imagine like sales, marketing, customer success, accounting, like literally everything. And we were selling SaaS products to the enterprise. And as soon as we sold the product, they would expect me to do all the training, all the onboarding and all that stuff. So of course, having nobody but me in anything but product, I would use like, GoToWebinar or Zoom, whatever was like the best of the worst to deliver these, onboarding and trainings.
Yeah.
But they were all exactly the same. And the more customers we got, the worse that problem got. Sometimes I would even I remember like my peak, I was doing like 8 back-to-back launches, like onboarding launches for new companies that we would sign up. And at the time, I had also left New York to nomad full time. So I was traveling in opposite time zones and doing these in like hotel lobbies at 4 a.m. So I was always envisioning this product that would do my job for me. Well, I could just go and live my life because, it wasn't that it's not important work because it ties into your revenue that keeps your company going. It was important work. It was just really mundane work that I don't think a human should be doing. So that's, after I sold my previous company in 2019, this was the problem that just kept coming top of mind. And I just couldn't believe that no one had solved it. All these companies were dumping money into live broadcasts like Facebook, Instagram, Restream, all those companies included, but nobody was solving the one problem that comes from live broadcast, which is scaling content that actually works for you. So if you're robotic about it, why can't you take a video and deliver it like a webinar with all the interactive elements or more and preserving a chat, like an asynchronous chat, just like any support chat system where you can run these things 24/7. People can watch it whenever they want and they can ask you questions. So you're not actually losing the interactivity, even though it's automated. So that's exactly what eWebinar is. We only focus on webinar automation. We turn any video into a webinar that you can run on demand or scheduled at certain times. So you can run like hundreds of them every single month without actually needing to be in front of a camera to do the webinar itself.
Did you find that in those 8 back-to-back webinars, you were recycling a heck of a lot of that content that you were kind of spewing off each time to these onboarding customers?
Well, it was exactly the same, right? Like because our product was the same, we just sold it to different companies.
Okay.
So we were launching it to a different audience, but you use the same jokes and all that stuff, and it gets kind of boring. And then sometimes you have a good day, sometimes you have a bad day, and then 100 people sign up, and then 7 people show up, and you still have to do it, right? And then because nobody shows up for the company, they want you to do another one, and then you send them a video, and then nobody wants to watch it. So it's just kind of like that same song. But like I had just always envisioned this, like I guess for lack of a better term, like a Netflix of webinar that people could just go to and watch at their own time without losing like what makes webinars like interactive and amazing, which is like all those interactive elements like polls, questions, quizzes, but also be able to preserve the chat.
So let's go into that a little bit more because, when you hear that for the first time, a lot of people probably do just think video on demand, right? I can push these things on YouTube and then send people links to them. But you're talking about something a lot more than that with this level of interaction. So what does that require from you then? The one producing the webinar content, do you have to have resources online to kind of respond to those things when they happen, to answer those asynchronous questions? I mean, what's required of you besides creating the video in the first place?
Yeah. And like, I want to say it's so funny that you asked that because it's almost like no matter how many years someone has spent in technology, and how simple I think this concept is because I live this problem, they always have the same question. They're like, oh, it's like running 24/7. So do I have to respond 24/7? Like the chat that we put on eWebinar is no different than any chat bubble that comes up on a website.
Okay.
So if someone's on the other side, they respond. But if it's not, you get an autoresponder and then you know you're going to get an email later. So it's like we are already communicating asynchronously every second of every day. Like you text, your friends, your wife, your husband or whatever, and they don't have to be there to respond in real time. Like no one's going to get angry at you. We just haven't adapted to this type of communication for webinar specifically.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. And it's like, I think the thing that like gets me every time that like is good and bad is how unimaginative people are until they visually see something.
Yeah.
So like the concept is kind of there, but that's why I don't do any live demos. Our product is our demo. So like when someone wants me to do a demo, I'm like, you could just go to our website and just join the demo. And as soon as you see it, you're like, oh, okay, like this is what that means.
Yeah. It's almost like you need a different word for it, because I think the word webinar has got this connotation, right, of what that is. It's either going to be live and I can ask questions in real time and interrupt them, or it's a video that I'm just playing whenever I want to. I think people probably just associate those two buckets, right? They don't even think there can be something better than that.
Yeah, I guess like we're definitely stuck in like problem aware and not solution aware. Like everyone has this problem of like, oh, I don't want to do the same thing over and over again. Or like, like running your webinar program or like your training program in your company is probably like the hot potato, right? It's like, this month is not me. I don't want to do it. Right. It just takes a lot of energy out of you. Like a 1 hour webinar basically takes like half a day, right? To prep and then to decompress. And then you feel like you're accomplished. So you don't want to do anything that day. Right. And we struggle with, we struggle with this, right? We're like, okay, like, should we just call ourselves an on-demand webinar? Because that's really just what we are. And people understand what an on-demand webinar is instead of like an automated webinar, which only like a percentage of people know. But I mean, we're still a young company, right? So we're kind of playing with that. But that, you're absolutely right. Like that could change, and we're trying different keywords and generating content and seeing what resonates.
So how are your customers finding out about this, especially if it's not something they're necessarily even looking for? They're not problem aware.
Oh my God, this is literally like the bane of my existence. Like if you go on like, Ahrefs or whatever you're using to look at keywords that we want people to search for, they're like in the hundreds. I'm like, really?
Tell me about it. Yeah.
I mean, and as a bootstrap company, we can only execute on $0 marketing strategies. So it's like, why do you think I'm on this podcast? I like actively market myself to podcasts. I'm, and a lot of the awareness things that we do are like long term. Like we generate a lot of different content with a lot of different keywords, even if the search volume is like 50. Like we still do that. Because maybe one day the market's going to catch up. But I also do things like, I write on, I share my experience bootstrapping 3 companies 4 to 5 times a week on LinkedIn. So I've been doing that, for a little over a year now. I've tried, doing my own podcast. So like we do a lot of different things. Like we've launched on Product Hunt in the past. So 9 out of 10 things we do don't really work that well. But everything we do collectively works a little bit. And our product has kind of built-in virality to it because it's such a beautiful branded product. Like somebody will attend a webinar and be like, oh, interesting. I wonder what this is. And then they'll look it up and then come to our site. So we haven't really solved that top of funnel lead gen, but once we solve that, I will be retired.
Yeah, that would be the ultimate, wouldn't it? Instead of paying $100+ dollars per AdWord click, it's insane. So you're creating a lot of content to try to create that authority and get people to come in. You already hit on it a little bit there, but I got to think somebody who interacts with this, meaning they attend a webinar on that platform, on your platform that was created by one of your clients, that's got to be probably the best selling point, right? Is them seeing that, oh, this could actually work. Oh my gosh, this would work great for my business, right?
We get like, I mean, it is so hard to attribute traffic.
Right.
Like, and we like the first question I ask in my demo is, how did you hear about us? I ask it again in the middle. And, for our product, like the more people see it, the more like the better data we're getting because the more people are answering. I think like something like 40% of people actually answer that question. But a lot of times they put like other, and then they'll be like friend or like forgot or boss, right? So you're not actually even getting a lot of like self-reported data, but we do get like, I think like 30 to 40% is just search. So it means that we are, even though it's a niche set of, people who are searching, we're at least getting those. So we are getting the low hanging fruit. But I think we just have to keep trying as much as possible. And we tell our customers to, sign up for this cash rewards program, tell your friends. Like every time somebody gives us a compliment within our support chat, I'll ask them to put a review on Capterra or G2. Most people don't do it. And it's just so hard to get people to move. But yeah, we do have to do a better job, I think, doing like more of the product-led movement and build in more bells and whistles within our product that makes it easy for people to recommend this to their network, which we're not doing today.
The ones that are finding you in search, though, are they basically looking for an alternative to Zoom or GoToMeeting or something like that?
Yeah, they're looking for like how to repurpose a replay or, how to run on-demand webinars or on-demand webinar software or interactive video, right? So they're in kind of in that realm, or like how to do better webinars. We also write a lot of stuff on like how to script your webinars, how to script the best on-demand demo. So it's kind of the peripherals that we've expanded to, but I think most people are looking to how to repurpose their webinar replay, putting their webinar on demand, or making their video interactive.
Yeah. So then are you finding that most of your clients are SaaS companies themselves who need to demo their own platform, or what industries are using this?
God, I wish that was true. There are like, that's our ICP, right? Like tech companies, they get it. Like any SaaS company you can imagine, like if you have a subscription business, your entire business is to get people to stay, right? How do you get people to stay? To get them to activate faster, right? Onboard faster, to learn new features faster. And these are people that really care a lot about their customer success. So these are people that are like actively trying to introduce their platform and new features to their customers. So they probably, if you're like, even if you're a small size, you probably have someone that is trying to do this on a quarterly basis. So we allow them to do it on a daily basis. However, the people that already know about this kind of software are people from like more like marketing background. So they're like, buy my course for $3,000, but in the next 5 minutes, you can buy it for $500, right? So there's a lot of those, like, I would say like internet cash sellers that already know about these solutions and are using something similar, and we just have a better solution. I would say like more SaaS companies or tech companies are maybe like 30 to 40% of our business. I want it to be 90% of our business because these are the guys that have like 20 webinars immediately. And because nobody has to run it live, they're not just able to replace what they're doing and do more of it. They're able to go deeper into each product line and, and create trainings for different types of users in different parts of their journey. Instead of doing like one overview of an onboarding, they're able to do it for their 3 different products for beginners and advanced users.
Well, okay. That makes a hell of a lot of sense to me. If you think about most everybody I talk to, subscription businesses these days is all focused on churn, right? How do I prevent them from falling out the bottom of the funnel because they're so expensive to put in the top, right? And the number one name of the game for any subscription business is engagement, right? They need to use your product. They need to see the value on it continuously, or there's other places to go and there's better places to spend dollars. So what subscription businesses struggle with on the other side, though, is they don't want to have a massive customer success team, right? They just can't keep hiring and adding to that, right? The economies of scale there are terrible. So how do you kind of replicate that experience, still give your customers something that feels more custom to them, but is easily replicated for you? This seems like a great way to do that. I'm not trying to sell your product here, but it just feels like this makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not that they can't have a bigger customer success team. I think most companies should, but most companies dump money into sales teams. Like they only focus on the first year. They don't focus on the second, third, fourth year, but they should. Unfortunately, that's not the reality of how budgeting works, right? Yeah. Everybody dumps money into sales and nobody dumps money into post sales. And, and that's something that I'm an advocate for is like, I think if a lot of companies cut half their sales team, they wouldn't, I don't think their sales numbers would have a difference because most people aren't great salespeople. They're like account managers. But if you focus on investing in your customer success, you're actually focused on the retention, the churn, but also potentially the upgrades. But like we have companies that have 500,000 users on platform, but 3 people on their success team. And that's not uncommon. It's just crazy. But like, I think companies should really rethink where they are investing their dollars. And I think it should be in customer success.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. It's an interesting perspective that you could cut a good bit of your sales team and probably not have that big of a impact on end sales.
I mean,
but
your sales might increase because they'd be like, I can actually get fired. maybe I could actually go sell something.
There's something to be said for that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we started recording here, we're talking a little bit about pricing, and just how, man, there's just so many facets to that, and there's pros and cons, and a hell of a lot to consider when you go down that road. You said you guys have talked about that and talked about your strategy. Walk us through that, your evolution of it, and maybe some lessons you've learned along the way.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is just super timely. Before we hit record, I had mentioned I posted a pricing related LinkedIn post yesterday, and it just kind of went viral overnight, which is like the 5 pricing mistakes that we made. But to go back to the first part of your question, like when we came out of the gates, like it's always hard to price your first product, right? It's like when you don't want to be the cheapest, you can't be the most expensive. You just have to be able to justify your price. And that's kind of where I wanted to be. Like I knew what similar products were being priced at, but I also didn't want to be the cheapest because I didn't want to attract a certain type of customer that we didn't want to support. I didn't want people to sign up because we were cheap. And I think anyone that runs a subscription business would know what I'm talking about, right? Like those are just people you don't want to support because they also have the highest churn. But we started at a price that we thought was fair. I think when we started, we were priced at lowest plan $49. So it was like $49, $99, $199, and it was like 3 tiers. And it was based on the number of webinars you have. So we because we were not a live platform, we don't have bandwidth issues. You can add, as many people on your team, doesn't matter to me, right? But what we wanted to align our value with, because we wanted to save people's time, was the more webinars you have, the more time we save. So the more webinars you have, then in theory, the more you should pay, the more your ROI should be.
It's a good look at value. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I say like one webinar, it's not like playing it once. Like one webinar has a recurring schedule. So say your demo is one webinar, you can run it 100 times. It's still considered one webinar. So that's how we started. 2 years later, after we had 20 plus integrations, we released new features and bug fixes every single week. We did that for 2 years straight. We doubled our prices, and even doubling was not that much, right? It's like $99, $199, $299. Yeah. And I think the first mistake that we made on that, maybe I guess the only mistake we made on that, was I wanted, like so many founders had told me, like, because we're bootstrapped, you need to raise prices for existing customers. Like, because if you want to get to profitability quickly, which is what we needed to do, and if you really believe that your product is offering the value that it is, then doubling your price is actually not a lot. You're going to lose a percentage of people, but the revenue increase is going to be net positive. Okay. And people that have done it have told me most people won't even say anything. They don't even notice. And the people that don't see ROI, they're going to churn anyway. Right. And, I wanted to do the honorable thing and not do that. I wanted to grandfather our existing customers. But months later, I realized that is not what I should have done, because as our platform continued to grow, our platform cost was also going up. Sure. So our Amazon was going up. Our streaming costs were going up. Also, when we made that decision, we didn't have clarity on the true cost of an attendee. We should have figured that out, but we thought it was so negligible that we didn't figure it out. But we also didn't realize that as we grew, we would attract high usage customers where the streaming cost was not insignificant.
Okay.
So for a percentage of our customers, our plans are actually like, we actually lose quite a bit of money on our plans. And because we didn't double prices for existing customers, like if we did, we would have immediately made, even if we lost, say 20%, we would have made like 30,000, like on top of what we already had. Okay. And I hadn't paid myself for 4 years. So my salary is sitting in that 30,000. And
sure.
and we needed to pay more, more streaming costs, more Amazon fees for just hosting. But also because our platform was growing, we needed to hire another senior dev. So like this is now where all of that is sitting. So like it's one of those things where you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be different from you guys. But like, honestly, like if your founder friends are giving you advice on something that they've done in the past, and it sounds like really good advice, like you should just take it.
Yeah, it's probably good advice. You should really listen to it.
So I think that was like how we came up with our pricing was we basically just looked at what other people were charging. We just picked like a middle ground.
When you did that, when you doubled your price, but grandfathered in the old customers, did you tell them you were keeping them there? Did you communicate with them?
We did. And like, the surprising and kind of disheartening thing was they just didn't care that much. Like some people were like, oh yeah, cool, thanks. But it wasn't like extra loyalty because you didn't raise their you didn't raise their price by $50 or like $100, right? I mean, these are big companies. They're probably paying like $100,000 a year for Salesforce.
Yeah, right.
Like if they don't care about me. And if we're saving them 20 hours a month, right? Or 100 hours a month. Some people were saving like 500 hours a month. Like they don't care about an extra $100. Like they want to pay us.
Right.
We're just not charging them. But I also want to talk about like one other, I thought was a pretty big mistake that we made because we didn't want to put in the dev work in the beginning and we wanted just to launch faster out of the gate was like, we didn't have an annual plan. And so because we didn't have an annual plan from the beginning, and then we got so caught up with just feature parity and building features and being stable and all these other priorities, we didn't have time to even look at implementing an annual plan until now. And now is 2.5 years after launch. And because we didn't have an annual plan, we didn't have an opportunity to collect cash up front, even when people wanted to pay us more. And a lot of times we realize it's not even about a discount. They just don't want to expense it every month.
Right. Yep.
And we
been there myself.
And when we were experimenting with partners and affiliates, we couldn't give them a commission that was meaningful enough to engage them. Because it's like we could pay you 20% of $50 or $100, and they're like, I don't care about that. Right. I want like $500, but we couldn't pay them $500. Right. So like that was one of the things that like I didn't know it would have such a big impact. Because if you think about like if 5-6 people decide this month to sign up annual, that's an extra $10,000 a month. That's my salary right there.
Yeah. Right? And you've got the cash in the bank. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And then you could, maybe invest in, some ads, which we, don't do, or maybe you can invest in a campaign or you can hire an extra person. Right. So I think these were like the two biggest revenue mistakes that we made that like other people had to warn me. And I'm like, no, I'm going to be different, or we can do it later. But anytime you make these decisions, it's not like, oh, snap my fingers and I'm just going to do it. Right. Like you need the dev work to actually implement a new plan, for example, a new set of emails. Right. And then you have to think about what do people want to move between plans? What do we do in those scenarios? And then you're like, oh, it's too complicated. Let's just do it next quarter. Before you know it, it's like 3 years later.
Yeah. When we model out subscription flows, customer journeys, it's always easy to do happy path. You're right. You're like, this is the way I want my customers to go. And then you start asking those what if questions, and it becomes this giant root system of all of the different paths that customers can take, but you realistically have to solve for them because they're inevitably going to happen, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's also my first real product-led company. Like my last company, it was like enterprise SaaS. We had a customer journey where people could sign up on their own, but I didn't know how to focus on that. Like I only sold one-on-one and closed a deal. So I didn't realize that like any sort of product led movement and where people sign up on their own, it like has that big of a lift on every new decision that you want to make. Right. And another thing that is, that I would do differently is we didn't limit our trial. Like we didn't limit the usage. Okay. So what that means is we don't have a path where we can force people to sign up. So let's say you've got a usage limit. I only allow 100 attendees for your trial. You hit 101, you have to be forced to upgrade and make a decision right there. And the problem with that is not only are you not forcing people to upgrade when they hit a limit, we also created a situation where people can game the system super easily because they can actually sign up and use it as much as they want, as if it's as if they've just fully rolled out in their company. So they just keep doing that and doing that and doing that. And don't forget, like we never figured out our streaming costs. So we had a situation where one guy came in and he pumped almost 200,000 attendees into our system within 10 days before we even realized it, because we didn't have these alerts built in. So it burned like $800 of just streaming costs, or no, $8,000 of streaming costs within 10 days. And it's all because we did not limit the trial and thought that, these costs are negligible, but they're not. So if I were to do it again, like I would just come up with some limit of the trial so that people can get to the first value and experience it. But do you really need thousands of attendees before you think, oh, this is a good product? Like you don't, right? But But it's the same thing as, okay, well, yeah, someone can say, well, just go limit your trial then. Well, I can't do that because it's just a fingers, right? It's just a different upgrade path. Right now, we have to build a situation where people can force an upgrade, and we don't have that right now. And we have just a whole other set of priorities and features and bug fixes that we have to, push out every week and every quarter. So these are all things we're now retroactively trying to address, but each one of them takes time and is painful in its own way.
Yeah, well, you got to think that guy, if he really did have 200,000 attendees, he's getting some sort of huge value out of all of these people attending whatever content it is that he's putting out there. And if he'd have had that gate, do you think he would have upgraded? Is that guy a customer today?
No, he was horrible. Basically, I got in touch with him. We didn't cut him off right away because, he was like some YouTube influencer in some other part of the world. And I'm like, okay, hey, this is happening. We're now figuring out the fees. And actually, he signed up for us because he realized we would host the video. And in other platforms, he would have to use his own Vimeo. So he didn't want to pay for it. So he figured out this loophole before us.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, let me figure out the cost. And then let me come back to you and see if you can at least pay us such that we don't lose money. And he was like super nice. He was like, yeah, I totally get it. I'm totally willing to work with you. I love your platform. This guy was spending $10,000 a day on Facebook ads and Google ads and pumping them into our system. And then when we figured out what the streaming cost was, he was like, oh yeah, I'm not going to pay for that. And then he just and then I just had to remove him right away and just ban him. And then he tried to sign up a second account. And I'm like, I just texted him because at that point I had his contact. I'm like, you are not going to do this again. But yeah, he was just horrible. He was paying like $10,000 a day for ads, and he wouldn't pay me the fees that he had already used.
Yeah.
So there are people like that as well.
I'm not trying to make a bunch of money here. I'm just trying to cover my costs. And he was still like,
and he was like, no.
Wow. All right. Well, there are customers like that. I guess we've all been through it. Now that you're on the other side of these mistakes, as you say, in pricing, what was the end result? I mean, the customers that you did have to, that you did raise the price on up to the current price, did most of them stay? Did
we haven't done that yet?
A lot of churn? What's that?
We haven't done that.
Oh, you haven't done it yet. Okay.
These are just like mistakes that are floating up, that are like bubbling to the surface that I'm like, okay, now we have to do all of these things. I expect to lose like 10 to 20%.
Okay.
But I also expect that the percentage of people that will leave are people that will leave anyway.
That we're going to.
Because I think for any business, there are people that get a lot of value. That are like, hey, if you charge me 5 times, I am still a happy customer.
Yep.
But there are people that are just really price conscious, and we do have those on our platform that could be individual consultants, businesses that are just starting up, right? People that just maybe aren't ready, but they thought they were ready, and maybe they come back a year later. So we do have a subset of those anyway, and those just aren't people you can save. But what we do want are people that really get a lot of value from this. They want to stay, they want to work with us, and these are people that are excited to tell their friends. Right. And actually, what I didn't mention and why we doubled our prices last year was we were starting to get people that signed up because we were the cheapest. Right. Because at this point, our product is so big. It has all the bells and whistles. It's better than other platforms. And then compared to other ones, we're the cheapest. But what it attracted was like the bottom of the barrel customer that are just like, they're not tech savvy. Some coach told them to sign up for this. They have no idea what they're doing. They want you to help them set up all their Zaps. They're just signing up for their new CRM, and they drain all your resource, all your time, and then they don't convert. Or like after a couple months, they don't make a sale on the platform, and they're like, oh yeah, these webinars don't work for me, so I'm just going to cancel. So we were starting to see that as a pattern. And we wanted to, like, we just can't, like, we like all the founders are doing their own customer support. So we needed to cut that out. And after we raised prices, that noticeably went away. So we got less signups, lower conversion, but then it was net positive. And the people that came in were more established businesses. They were more tech savvy, and they were more appreciative. And these were people that we actually enjoyed working with.
Yeah. So you got a better quality customer at the end of the day anyway.
Yeah. And the thing is, in the beginning, we couldn't have charged 100 to begin with, even if we wanted to. Like, it would be like a ballsy move, but I don't think it would have I don't think it would have flew, because we didn't even have any integrations. Right. And now, like, I think that's what people need to stick around.
I'm really curious, going back to the beginning of our conversation. So this is your third time bootstrapping a company, but the other two were in real estate and, as you said, enterprise software. So now you're in a completely different vertical, albeit solving a problem that you yourself experienced. So you knew there really was a problem out there. But really, what made you want to go down this path? What made you think that moving out of real estate, you could be successful doing this?
Well, number one, I hate real estate. Like, can you imagine spending your life selling software to real estate agents? That's what I was doing. These are people who will spend $200 on a bottle of wine, but they will not spend $20 on your software. That's just not where their head is. That's just not how they spend money. And so they are also traditionally probably 10 years behind any other industry, like in just like technology adoption. So supporting that type of customer was just really hard. But most importantly, real estate as an industry is very small because it's regionalized. You can't have a product that works in the US, but also in the UK. It just doesn't work that way. So it's just very niche. And after 10 years of being in that industry, I was just ready for a new challenge. And one of the non-negotiables that I had coming into a new company, even before this idea, was like, I needed something that could be sold 100% through the internet. Because previously I was spending a lot of time in conferences, booth sitting, one-on-one demos. It required a lot of my time live, but that was how the industry was. And because I travel so much, like, that was infringing on me just living my life. So it was important to me that I had a product that was like 100% product led. That was just like trial, credit card, didn't do any live demos, like not high price point. I did not want to sell to the enterprise. But what was also really important to me was I wanted something that was industry, geographically, and language agnostic. Because in my previous company, it was just so limiting. And when we weren't doing well, like, eventually we came out on the other side, but for years we weren't doing well. I couldn't take the product and just try something else. Whereas for something like this, like, as long as, you're in either, sales and marketing or customer success, there is a use for it. And now we support, over 25 different languages. Like, I don't care what language you speak. This is more of like a role that we serve and not an industry that we serve. So I was just eager to do something different, but I needed something that was much larger than where I was. So for even though I had two businesses, it felt like it was like an MBA that I took
Yeah.
for this business. Like it really feels
Yeah.
like this is the real business.
What were some of the early, like, when you started this business, some of the early, like, oh my gosh, this is way different than what I have done previously, and something you kind of had to learn?
I think the biggest shock to me, because I come from an enterprise sales world, like background, like before I started my first company, I worked for SAP in large enterprise sales.
Mm-hmm.
And then before that, I always worked for companies where I sold products and services to other companies. So like BD and like sales led is really like where my experience is.
Yeah.
I had no idea that when you sell a $50 product, that nobody would pick up the phone and talk to you. I really didn't realize that. While like, I think every company, big or small, starts from founder led sales. When you have zero customers, you're the one selling. So in the beginning, I was like, yeah, cool. Like, I'm selling to my 1 degree network and 2 degree network, but that goes pretty quickly. So I think I exhausted that probably within the first 9 months. And then you're like, okay, well, what's lead gen? Like what's inbound? What's content? Never had to do content because it was just like, oh, Nick has to buy something. I reach out to Nick. I buy a leads list and I go to a conference and I just like hunt down these people and have meetings with them. So like, that's my world. So, and then I tried to do like one-on-one outreach for probably 3 to 6 months on my own for like just cold leads, but like nobody cared because our product was just so small. Like MailChimp is not going to have a salesperson hammering the phone. So I think that was like the biggest realization. However, while that was, disheartening, I also wanted to remind myself that I started this business to not do one-on-one sales because I was so sick of that. So while I needed to do it to get it off the ground, I was also really happy to learn different strategies that could create an inbound engine, which is like literally what we do every day now, just myself and my COO figuring out what are the different content avenues, what are the different keywords, how many writers can we hire, like what else haven't we done yet, right? Like just, those kind of things.
Yeah. Those are two, I mean, I've been in very, very similar shoes. Those are two drastically different hats to wear. I mean, you're just coming at the same problem from a totally different angle. How did you make that adjustment? I mean, just kind of learn as you go?
I mean, when you have a zero cash date because you're a bootstrap business, like you can do it.
Yeah.
And like, you can start doing it, or you can try to hire someone to take away your pain, but that never works. I've tried it so many times in my life to hire someone to take away my pain. But when you don't at least have a basic understanding of how it works, you're just going to hire bad people. Like I probably hired maybe 20 different marketing agencies, like digital marketing agencies, through 3 businesses in my life. I've never been able to hire a good one. And even in this company, we try like 2 or 3 different agencies before we're like, okay, why is it not working? So I think 2 Decembers ago, I just took 1 month. I just went super deep into like HubSpot, like Academy, to learn like what's marketing. And then what I learned was marketing isn't one function. Marketing is like 10 different functions. Like there's like content writers for short form and long form. And then the person who writes your ads isn't the person who buys your ads. And the person who buys Twitter ads is not the one who buys LinkedIn ads. I'm like, what the heck? So so then we, like my COO and I came together and just decided that if our business was going to be dependent on marketing and creating an inbound engine, it's too important for us to farm that out to someone else. So he basically took over to learn like SEO and content. And we hired an SEO agency that we couldn't afford to teach him their strategy so he could do it on their own. And so now he actually runs with that, like more of the direct stuff. And then I try to do all the more innovative indirect stuff, which is like podcasting, writing content on LinkedIn, like more partnership, like co-marketing content. But it was just like one piece at a time. Like, how do you do this? Like one word at a time.
Yeah. I mean, thanks for sharing that, because I've heard this story many times of just going through marketing agency after agency, focusing on different things, thinking that's going to be the secret sauce. This is going to make this work. But what I've heard the most that is successful is figuring out the system that works for you on your own first, and then bringing in the people to help replicate that, if that even makes sense, if that's even something you need to do. But starting there.
I mean, the problem I realize, Nick, is like every marketing agency you talk to is like, I can give you what you want. And then 6 months later, they're like, oh, I can't give you what you want because you're not paying enough. But then it's like, well, but that happens so many times, and then you have to start over and start over. And what I realize is it's not that they're not good at their job. It's that most marketing agencies, and like, I'm using that very broadly, but I'm saying like SEO, content creation, and all that, are like getting visibility on the internet, like those agencies. It is significantly harder to go from 0 to 1 than from 1 to 2. And most companies can do 1 to 2 because you have a brand that's recognizable. Yeah. But when you have zero brand, barely any customers, nobody knows you, no one's searching for you, so few people actually know how to do that. They think they know how to do that because they've done it for bigger companies. But I think when you get to, it's like when you get to a certain size, then it's like, okay, well, then you're throwing money at the problem. But when you're not at that size, money doesn't solve that problem. It's creativity and just pure hustle that has to solve that problem first. And then you can bring in money to solve that problem.
Absolutely. Do you think it's because in that 0 to 1 phase, marketing is just as much about figuring out your product market fit? And none of those guys that I've ever talked to are product development people. They're like, well, what is your product? I can tell, help you get it to market. But if you don't know exactly what that is and what your niche is, I'm not sure what they're supposed to be marketing.
I mean, I think it's a part of that, but I also think it's just the lack of resource. Like marketing is a pay to play game. Like, of course, if I can write a piece and spend $5,000 on Google or LinkedIn and drive eyeballs to it, then like you can see some success. But that's not the case for a lot of 0 to 1 companies. Yeah. Right. Like I'm still trying to figure out for the next, $10,000 that I make, should I hire a support person or should I hire another developer or should I pay myself? Right. Like none of that is going to ads. So I think the 0 to 1 phase is like a lot of the work that you need is just not marketing related. Right. It's not that type of marketing. It's more like integrations and co-marketing efforts with other companies. It's not like, let's get visibility on the internet. Yeah. But I do think it's super important. And if there's someone on your team that can at least start to own the content piece, then you need to do it. But if you don't have someone on your team, ideally you have someone that knows how it kind of works so that you can direct maybe a newer agency that is not, $5 to $10,000 a month in retainer. Apparently that's where they all start. And, hopefully you can find someone that's more startup-y to at least get that ball rolling. But you do need to know how it works to challenge the person that's executing it for you.
Right.
Like, why are you doing that? Why are you not doing that? And that's what we were missing. Gotcha.
Well, last question for you here, Melissa. What does the next couple of years look like for you guys? You talked about adding a bunch of features. It sounds like there's a whole lot of things that you guys are working on, but crystal ball, what does the next couple of years look like for you?
Yeah, I think personally, I just want to not just hit profitability, like break even profitability. Like I want to make sure that myself, my co-founder, and like our COO, who is really like the third co-founder, makes a good living. I think the three of us are the people that have made the most financial sacrifice, not just in investing, like actual money into getting this up and running, but like
blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. Like my COO lives in New York. Like he took a 50% pay cut to work for our company and we have no benefits. Like, so he can't be doing that. Like he's in his early 50s, right? He can't be doing that for much longer. Right. And at some point as a founder, you want to repay the people that took that risk. Yeah. And, I carry that. Right. So I think in the next 2 years or in the next 6 months, I want to make him whole. I want to make sure he gets, the salary that he deserves to live the life that he wants in the most expensive city in the world. Like that's my priority. But I think from a product perspective, like to your point earlier, is I want to figure out where we sit, right? Maybe it's not automated webinars, right? Maybe it's on-demand webinars and we just go super deep into saying we are the best on-demand webinar platform, or we are the best interactive video platform, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're still kind of playing with that. And there's two paths, right? Like maybe the market catches up and webinar automation becomes a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it doesn't. And we have to be more flexible in how we figure out where we sit within the market. I don't know where that is yet, but hopefully in the next 2 years, we'll figure that out. And then we will see this myth of a hockey stick growth that no one's ever, like no one I know has ever seen themselves, but it gets talked about.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All the time. All the time. The great myth.
Yeah.
Well, Melissa, really enjoyed the conversation today. This has been a lot of fun. For the listeners who have questions about what we talked about or wants to learn more about eWebinar, where are the best places for them to go?
Yeah, if you want to connect with me, or just get tips and tricks on how to bootstrap your own company, you can find me on LinkedIn. So my last name is spelled Kwan, Kwan. And if you want to see how eWebinar can potentially help you or your business, just go to ewebinar.com and join the demo. I'm always managing the chat. So for all the hours I'm awake, I am there in front of the computer waiting for you to chat with me.
Awesome. Well, again, Melissa, really enjoyed the conversation today, and best of luck to you guys as you continue to grow.
Thanks so much for having me again.